Welcome back to the show as we get reaction to Jürgen Todenhofer's rare insights on life inside ISIL. What will it take to stop the extremist group? How much does the Muslim world need to engage? And is there a purely military solution? Joining us now from Los Angeles, Islamic thinker and reformer Tawfik Hamid. He was once a member of a Muslim militant group, but now advocates against religious extremism. Also with us, right here in the studio in D.C., retired U.S. Army officer Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He played key roles in operations with the CIA and FBI and was awarded the Bronze Star for his combat tours in Afghanistan. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Tony, let me start with you. We just heard Jürgen Todenhofer tell us there that there is no military solution to this crisis in the Middle East, in this particular part of Iraq and Syria right now. That if there is going to be any kind of a military solution, it has to be led by the Arabs, specifically the Sunnis. Do you agree with that?
I do. The Sunni nations that we're talking about have to play a much stronger role than they have. We're talking about Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan. I think that the key here is that because ISIS is Sunni-led, they have to have a Sunni solution come into this. And also, the broader construct has to have a Muslim-led solution. I've talked to my colleagues who are Muslim in England, the folks who have been there forever, who are, they believe to be very loyal Muslims who are very anti-ISIS. I think it's very important for them to pick up the cause as well. The Association of British Muslims, for example, have been around since the 19th century. They have been fighting the ISIS recruiting effort in London, for example. So I think indeed you have to consider, as much as I think the West has a great military capability, this has to be a war of culture, a war of ideas and psychology. And right now, we are not winning that war.
Tawfik, we heard in that interview with Jürgen that many of the young people who are being recruited by ISIS are disillusioned, they're disaffected, they're discriminated against by people in their home countries. Yet at the same time, when we look at the brutality of ISIL, what is the attraction for young people?
For young people, the attraction of obeying what they think is the religious orders is very important for many people who follow ISIS. Just to be loyal to the religion, loyal to Allah, Islam, loyal to Islam itself as a religion and believe, for them, this how they see Islam and how they see that's what God wants from them. So it's ideological factors plays a role. Maybe there is some stage when people join the radical group in general, could be poverty can play a reason or discrimination, as you mentioned, but we cannot say these are the main factors of the problem. The ideology play a major role. There are many people who are discriminated against in the world, yet they do not go do this terrible acts. So there is discrimination everywhere in the world, but yet there is a specific group of people following a specific ideology that do at the end these evil acts. And I believe this points clearly to the important role of ideology in the phenomena.
And that is a problem, Tony, isn't it? That you're not fighting people here, you're not even fighting weapons here, you're fighting an ideology.
Well, I agree with the assessment here. Clearly, many of these people are, in their own societies, considered to be basically disconnected. They want to belong to something. This gives them something greater than themselves to belong to. We all want to belong to something. We want to feel important. This gives them a great sense of importance and purpose. And this purpose, by the way, then, in many ways, goes to the most vile instincts of some of those who are drawn to this. And so right now we have no counter. We have no ability to say that there's a better way for you. This is the only way. And this is why I said in the opening with you, is that we've got to consider how we can wrap our minds around the fact that ISIS has mastered two things that Al-Qaeda never did. First, social media. They've been able to portray themselves very effectively through use of 21st century technology, not only through Twitter and that sort of thing, but from very sexy recruiting videos, which makes it all look okay. Secondly, they've been able to establish an enclave in an area which is basically left ungoverned. Therefore, they're being able to establish essentially a base of operations which allows them basically time and distance and logistics to be able to allow this to expand. it's not going well. They've been able to slow them down. I think a lot of the momentum that we saw ISIS going full bore has slowed down. But again, you're not going to start walking it back. And more importantly, this is like a cancer. It's grown. It's into a number of societies. The Australians have had problems. Canada has had problems. And I mentioned my friends in England are continuing to have problems with ISIS recruiting more people on a daily basis than the British Army.
Tawfik, to what extent is this recruitment campaign being helped by the military campaign? In other words, the military campaign is actually being counterproductive. It's helping ISIL to actually recruit young people when they see towns and villages being bombed.
Yeah. The military campaign by itself may be needed, but it's certainly insufficient to end the problem of ISIS. That is the real core of the problem, that military solutions by themselves are insufficient. We have seen this in Afghanistan. We have seen this in Iraq during the war in Iraq. The radicals use non-traditional approaches, and just traditional warfare styles will not work with them. You need to add to the traditional approaches some approaches from outside the box. You need proper and effective psychological warfare. And I insist on the word effective, because it's not the issue of using psychological warfare, but it has to be effective, because if you don't use sufficient negative reinforcement for the radicals, they will never stop what they are doing. For the radicals, it is win-win-win situation. If they died for Allah, they will go to paradise. If they have victory on earth, they control the land and they do what they want, implement their barbaric ideology. And if they were caught in prisons of the Western societies, they will be treated in a very humane manner. So for them, there is no negative reinforcement. And unless and until there is sufficient negative reinforcement for them, this problem will continue. Wars will be ended only, or ended during history, when there is sufficient negative reinforcement. In World War II, when Japan realized, for example, it could be eradicated from the map, this was sufficient negative reinforcement to stop the war. The same for Nazi Germany. But with Islamic radicals, I don't see any efficient psychological warfare or ideological warfare that has been launched effectively up till this moment.
Tony, very quickly, I've got 30 seconds. One of the U.S. strategies to fight radical violent groups has been to cut off the funding. Follow the money. Can this work?
No, that's but one aspect. Again, I agree with your other guest. We've got to look at the psychology of this. During the Cold War, we defeated the Soviets through something called reflexive control. We understood their vulnerabilities.
Absolutely.
We hammered them until they defeated themselves. We had to look at the same sort of thing here. Unfortunately, our culture is so reluctant to look at this because of the religious aspects of it. We have this political correct mantra that doesn't allow us to look at this as an adversary and go into them. So we have to partner with our Muslim counterparts who want to get rid of ISIS and come up with a good psychological approach, as your other guest said. That's how we actually defeated the Japanese and Germans and Soviets. We've got to do the same thing here.
Tony, Shaffer, Tawfik, Hamid, thanks to both of you for joining us. And that's all we have time for, but the conversation continues online. Join us on CCTV America's Facebook page to comment on this or any other show, or chat with us on Twitter at @CCTV_America. I'm Arnold Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.